Welcome to Betrayal Trauma Recovery. I'm Anne. It's summer, and I remember being so excited, thinking my marriage would improve as we spent quality time together on that road trip, our family reunion. If you end up having the same experience I did, where vacations left me feeling more hopeless and scared because I found out on one of those trips that my husband was using explicit material and lying to me about it. We're here for you every day, all summer long. You don't have to schedule an appointment or wait. You can hop on one of our daily group sessions from anywhere. We're an empathetic team of betrayal trauma professionals, and we can help you right away. Our daily group session support is the safest space for women to focus on their healing without fear of being traumatized by a therapist or clergy who might seem to think that you're part of the problem. You're not, and you're not alone. If you're ready to join a community of women who truly understand, check out our group session schedule at btr.org/group. We'd love to see you today. And if this podcast has been helpful to you, subscribing and leaving a 5-star review is the best way to help other women find it. Follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Together we can reach every woman who needs to hear this. I have a member of our community on today's episode. We're going to call her Louise. She's here to share her story. So many women share a similar story, talking about how their husband seems very paranoid and angry. One of the reasons women think their husband is paranoid is because they don't realize he's lying. So when he says things like, "You're trying to control me, you don't respect me, nobody respects me," women take it at face value. They don't realize that he's lying, and so he sounds really paranoid. And maybe he is, or maybe it's just manipulation. Louise, welcome. Let's start with your story.
Thank you. We were married at 19, and we knew each other all our life. I had noticed that he was really mean to his sister, and I talked him out of that, so I thought he'd learned his lesson. I mean, the stories are all the same, but talking at me in the evenings in bed and sometimes in the daytime for hours on end, always disagreeing until I cried. And it took me years to figure that out. Like, we were raised in that patriarchy setting where women just didn't have a say, right? In the Mennonite church, and then we went into the Bill Gothard stuff and, wanting to be the perfect wife and mother, and the way to do that was to be totally submissive and obedient. And so then he was always saying, "But you're not obeying me." And when I did, he would, in front of the children, say, "But I told you different."
So he would move the goalposts?
Basically that crazy making, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were married in 1972. And in those days, there was no information, there was no internet. We had 7 biological children and 3 from an orphanage in Haiti. That was a really difficult time. I went to the library one day, and there was this little book that caught my attention. It was called Men Who Hate Women. And that was the beginning of my education.
Before you found the book, what did you think was going on? Can you talk about your feelings at that time?
I felt like I was just never good enough, and I thought if I could only be good enough, maybe something would work out, or if we could get counseling, the old story.
You didn't just think that, by the way. He was actually telling you that. He was saying to you, the problem is you. If you would cook better, if you would do this better, if you would serve me more, then it would solve our problems, which kept you in this hamster wheel. You were being manipulated to think that. He wanted you to think that.
And when he sensed that I was thinking that, then of course he used that, right?
Exactly.
And pastors were no help. They said the same thing. And the teaching we had from Bill Gothard was, as long as everybody was obedient to whoever was above them in that umbrella scheme, then everything would work out right. A person is attracted to the promises that if you do this, everything will come out right. And then I opened up this book in the library, and there was this list. If your husband does 6 of these 20 things, then you're being abused. And I got to number 11 or 12, and I slammed it shut because you don't want to hear that, because then what do? That's the end of your life. And I snuck it home and read it, but there were no answers in it either. They didn't really have any answers, just explanations. And yeah, you're supposed to be strong, but when you've been raised to think that you're not strong and that you don't have a say, then you can't be strong. And then the next thing was my sister gave me the boundaries teachings. And that was a shock too, that I was actually allowed to say no to anybody in this world. So I listened to that over and over and very slowly started to do that. And finally, one day I was praying and I felt to read 1 Peter 3 and 4. And I read it several times and I thought, okay, God, what do you want me to learn from this? And a light went on. This is not a formula, but this is what I feel I was told. And so I went to him and I said, I think God told me you can have all the sex you want. And he goes, oh. And I said, but you have to choose. There are two types of relationship. There's master slave and there's Christ church. And you have to choose which one. If it's master slave, you command me to do, and I'll just let you. And if it's Christ church, then you have to win me back because you have lost my affection. Both options require humbling yourself, right? That's not going to happen. And first he yelled at me and said, you're my wife, you have to obey me, and I command you to feel affection for me right now. We slept in the same bed for 3 more years and never had sex again because he couldn't admit that he wanted a slave and he couldn't humble himself to be Christ-like. On the other hand, this gave him a lot of fuel with counselors. She hasn't let me touch her in 3 years, right? I know he masturbated about 4 times a day. He did admit it, and then I figured out why I was finding him sleeping in the hay all the time because he tired himself out with it.
Wow.
Whether he had magazines or not, I have no idea because I didn't think of it. I mean, we were married 25 years, and I only found some of this out right at the end. It didn't cross my Mennonite mind, so that was all that was on his mind. If I ever smiled at him, he would come rushing over and saying, "You want sex? You smiled at me." That's all that was on his mind. He was in fantasy land, and if I tried to talk to him, I was interrupting the fantasy and he would be angry. So he was basically angry all the time. And when I blew up once in a while, accused me of being too angry and having to protect the children from me. He would talk at me for hours and hours, just in circles, the crazy making thing. And I cried out to God. I said, God, what should I do? And I actually heard the words, shut up, in a nice way. And I said, what? It was like, this never goes anywhere. Stop engaging in these conversations. So I did. And then he would tell counselors, she won't talk to me. And if only she would communicate with me, we would be fine. And they would agree with him. Then I started writing things down. And when he caught me, he says, you shouldn't keep a record of wrongs. That was evil. And we flew all the way to Minneapolis to this well-known, really good counselor. And I showed him my notes. He read them that evening, and the next day he said, if this is true, we have a big problem. Then he sent me out. He took my husband in. An hour later, he brought me in. He says, your husband reassured me that you made all this up.
What?
Yeah. It was a Christian counselor. He and his buddy had written some books. I forget what they were called, and I don't remember his name either.
Wow. Wow.
Another time, my sister took me to her counselor in Vancouver. I told him 1 or 2 sentences of what was going on, and then he perfectly got it. And he said, there's only one thing you can do, and that's an intervention. Get his friends together to intervene and tell him he's got to stop this behavior, or else they're going to help you get away. So I called my friends and they agreed to do that. And then they picked me up from my sister And when I got to their place, they had called him to come get me because I was all mixed up in the head.
Oh, so they turned on you.
So finally, toward the end, we went to Elijah House in Washington. It was Christian counseling. They do prayer counseling. Throughout the counseling, they asked God, what's going on here? And they figured it out. They said it was abuse. But he said it didn't work. He said to me, don't you know you're always wrong? And when I told him I wasn't going to talk all night, I said, if you can make me cry in 5 minutes, then you'll all of a sudden see my point. And if it takes 5 hours, and he says, oh, don't you know that if I can make you sick or cry, that makes a man out of me?
Wow.
It was shortly after that when I checked myself into the psych ward because I just felt like I couldn't take it anymore. And there was a counselor there, a psychologist, that talked to both of us and said, see, you just have to communicate with him. But the doctor in charge came to me on the third day and he said, listen, the nurses tell me you don't belong here. What is really going on? And so I told him. And a couple days after that, he said, do you want to go home? And I said, my kids need me, but I was happy there. And he said, well, he says, I'm a Christian. I don't believe in divorce, but I'm not going to let you out of here until I know you've made arrangements not to live with him anymore. And I fell apart because I thought that would be committing the worst sin in the book, even just separating. But I called my friend and she called the pastor, and the pastor told him, oh, just play along with it, live in your van for a few days, and once she gets home, she'll let you back.
Oh my word. This is abuse on top of abuse on top of abuse on top of abuse.
Yeah. And my dad said, oh, just give her a pill. But I never did let him come back.
You are so brave and so strong. Like you were resisting his abuse the whole time because you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You were going for help. And no one, except for that last guy, was helping you. You are so brave.
Actually, I wasn't going to divorce him, and his friends flew in and told him to get rid of me real quick, and so he divorced me. I think he thought I was making it all up. He's married to my cousin, and we'd always been friends, and I've known him all my life, so I don't know what the deal was, but I was glad.
His friend convinced him to let you go, really.
Yeah.
Your resistance had become quite troublesome for him. That's actually what happened to me. My ex divorced me because my resistance was so untenable to him.
I think I made him look bad, so he had to make me look bad. Then I was single for 8 years, and it was great. My health got better. I just loved raising the kids myself. But he basically ran me out of town. He played games with the finances. He totally ruined my reputation with my friends and the church and everything in little subtle ways where, well, you know how she gets and stuff like that. And even my oldest daughter, she came home one day and she said, Mom, if you knew what people were saying about you in this town, you wouldn't want to live here anymore. She didn't actually share what she had heard, but that's what happened. And so I thought, you know, maybe marrying again would be a good idea. This must be a rare dynamic. Surely there aren't a lot of guys like that around. But I met my current husband. It was a visa thing. You had to move here a week before you get married type thing.
So you meet him online. He's got a farm and you move to the States with him. Did you have a long distance relationship with him?
Yeah, but it wasn't that far. Like 5 hours, we could see each other fairly often. And looking back, sure, you can see the red flags. Well, I have to confess to you that I found some old pornography tapes, but I destroyed them. So that sounds pretty good, right? On the wedding day, I had a friend that I hadn't known terribly long, and he went off driving with her all afternoon of the wedding, and then he came home and took her into our bedroom for an hour with the door closed. I was shocked. I had my friends and family, they were all there in the house, and I still don't know what they were thinking because he ignored them all day. And then a couple years later, I signed us up for a marriage retreat. Found out 3 years later, he had arranged for his girlfriend to be there and her husband. I know that he had another email account, so he was keeping in contact with a couple of girlfriends, and he was definitely into pornography. He admitted it to the counselor we went to. It was pretty much the same thing all over again. Several years ago, I said, if we want to make this work, I want you to sign up with an abuse counselor. And he was like, no, that's not going to work because blah, 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 blah. And finally, he did sign up and she interviewed him. And then she talked to me and she said, you're wasting your money. Take that money and get help for yourself. The biggest thing that has helped me about 5 or 6 years ago, one day I looked in the mirror and I said, God, what do you think of me? How do you feel about me? And in the next 3 days, everything changed. I know what God thinks now. And so the next time he insulted my body, I just laughed. And I said something like, you're not such a young punk yourself anymore, something like that. Sometimes it still hurts. Sometimes it still makes me mad. But when you know to expect it and you know that it's not your problem, that makes a huge difference. And I've also learned to do a lot of boundary setting, and I know he thinks that means I'm controlling him, but I'm not. It used to be like, is it okay if I go to town? A lot of isolation. He didn't want me to go to the town 6 miles away because it was a waste of gas. And I just say, this is what I'm going to do today. I don't know. There's always answers and there's always help. The Bible says, Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice, and he will answer us. And sometimes he gives dreams, and sometimes a scripture, sometimes a friend. It's important to have support.
Like the support that's available through Betrayal Trauma Recovery. How is it different?
Oh, totally. Like night and day. The whole Christian world said you can't get divorced, and it's always the woman's fault. Everything. If you would treat him better or whatever, this wouldn't be happening. And you try until you make yourself sick, right? And, we can be thankful for all the support we have, but you still have to reach out. And
Well, do you know why we have that support now? It's because of women like you. I'm standing on your shoulders. Had you not resisted in all the ways that you resisted, I would not be here. And so we all owe a great debt to women who came before us, who led the way for us.
our stories hopefully can help someone else.
I'm so grateful for women who pressed on without any support at all. Your stories are both inspiring and then also so horrific. It sounds like torture, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. It's awful.
And the hard part is when people don't believe you,
Yeah. Can you believe that people are still not believing women?
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You are so brave and incredible. And as you continue to grow and heal, I'm so grateful to have you as part of our community. Thank you so much for all of your support. How long have you been listening to the BTR podcast?
4 years, almost from the beginning, I think.
Thank you so much for your support. Do you remember how you found the podcast?
I think on Facebook. And I sure appreciate what you all do.
We appreciate you. Thank you for all your support over the years. If it weren't for women like you, we wouldn't be doing this. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for putting it out there. And I mean, it takes something to just put our stories out there.
It does. It's a lot of work. It's so worth it. I'm so honored to hear women's stories because it's a very vulnerable thing to share your story. Thank you so much, Louise, for sharing today. It will make a big difference to someone who hears it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If this podcast is helpful to you, follow or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app to help other women find it. You can also subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. While you're there, comment, give it a 5-star rating. That'll help bump us up in the algorithm. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed on YouTube or other places and commented and given us 5-star reviews, because that's the number one way to get the word out to other women about this. If you've already purchased a copy of my book, Trauma Mama Husband Drama, from Amazon, please circle back and give it a 5-star rating. A lot of women are searching for books to figure out what to do about their husband, and rating Trauma Mama on Amazon will help them find this podcast, which is free to everyone. And of course, your generous donations keep this podcast going. Go to btr.org, scroll to the bottom, and click on Support the Podcast. And until next week, stay safe out there.